That's Jimmy Stein. I'm Clint Lamb, and this is the Cover Crimson YouTube channel. Jimmy, everybody else had to wait 24 hours, but we've already discussed the Alabama's defense against Vanderbilt's offense. Now we're going to talk about Alabama's offense against Vanderbilt's defense, because I feel like this offense, once again, it probably where we need to start is the lack or the inability to put up touchdowns near the red area. But at the same time, for the second week in a row, Alabama's offense is moving the football extremely well. They got to be able to finish off drives a lot better. That would have been the storyline of the game had they lost, was their inability to convert their opportunities into touchdowns. And I tweeted that out because it's just them constantly settling for field goals, especially to start the second half when your defense is finally giving you stops. That was really frustrating because they were moving the football with relative ease before that. But that's been, you know what, we'll go ahead and before I scatterbrain this, we'll start there. How concerned are you about Alabama's inability right now to convert those red zone, red area trips into touchdowns?
A little bit, because it is concerning. You know, for a while, Alabama did score a late touchdown, but I really thought late in the game it was going to end 23-14. I thought that was going to be the final score. And as we know, Vanderbilt using timeouts to get the ball back sort of hurt themselves, because I don't think without them using those timeouts, had they not called those timeouts, I think Alabama was running out the clock, but they called timeouts and sort of allowed Alabama to score that last touchdown. But my point being, I thought 23-14 was going to be the final score. And one of my themes, because I think about what we're going to talk about on the show, you know, while I'm watching the game and when the game's over, and I have immediate thoughts as to what I want to talk about. One of the things I was going to talk about is it was a real misleading score at 23-14. Right. Because I felt like Alabama played a lot better offensively than 23 points sounds. So you think to yourself, gosh, they must have turned it over a lot. No, they turned it over once. I thought Alabama just played better than 23 points. Conversely, I thought the defense played a little worse than giving up 14. Why? Because of Vanderbilt's red zone failures is the reason. That's the reason.
Does it not feel that was a similar storyline to the Georgia game, where the offense felt like it played a lot better than 24 points? And in a lot of ways, it felt like Georgia had played a lot better than 21 points. Like when you come out of these two games and they're averaging, what, 17, 35, 17 and a half points on defense. That's not great, but that's actually pretty good. And then offensively, you're averaging 23 and a half points. And it's like, man, I feel like they're like we're talking about this being one of the most dynamic offenses in college football. And the last two games, they've averaged 23 and a half points. I mean, it was like this is becoming a theme right now.
Yeah, it really is. And I just felt like I know, how can Alabama, and again, I'm referring to only scoring 24. I know they scored 30. That made it sound better, and it made it more in line with what actually happened, in my opinion. Offensively, that was more of a 30-point performance than a 23-point performance. But it's just strange to me that you can go, well, how do you think they threw the ball? Well, Ty was great. Ty's Heisman campaign continues. It was that good. 23 of 31, 300 yards. Ryan had a big game. Jeremy made plays. Zay Horton made plays. The pass game was good. Oh, well, you had problems running the ball. No, Jam Miller becomes the first Alabama running back in over 2 years to rush for 100 yards in an SEC game. So you ran the ball better than you've been running it. You threw the ball really well. You only turned it over once. Where are all the points? And I guess the answer was settling for field goals. 4 attempted field goals. You missed one. So that could have been 33. But let's say last year's team, I felt like you might know the number. Did last year's team attempt maybe like 8 field goals the whole season?
It wasn't a lot. It wasn't a lot at all.
It wasn't a lot. And you had 4 in this game alone. Last year's team just didn't bog down in the red zone. Usually because they were scoring from the 40. That's why they were just scoring from the 40. I mean, there's this idea Alabama wasn't eschewing field goals a year ago. They just didn't have the opportunity for many because they were scoring the ball or never getting there. I mean, that's what was going on there. It was a real boom or bust kind of offense. But this year, they're consistently moving the ball, but that doesn't mean they're consistently scoring touchdowns. It's a thing. It's something to watch. Because it's frustrating as a fan, and I was feeling frustration when I thought, gosh, the scoreboard just doesn't look like the game has looked. Because this feels like Alabama has won 35-23, but the scoreboard says it's 23-14.
I mean, especially in the first half, like the second half felt like Vanderbilt scored 0 points. Like it definitely felt that way. But the first half, it felt like Vanderbilt should have been, 24, 27, 28, somewhere in that range rather than 14. And so, yeah, that is something I actually said that on the post-game show as well, where I was glad that they got that late touchdown because I thought it was a more accurate reflection of how the game actually played out. But at the same time, you can't use that as a reason to ignore the inability to score touchdowns down there in the red area. So that is something that they've got to get fixed because that could have bit them. Like if Connor Talty goes out there and he misses that fourth field goal attempt, which would have been possible, he had missed some, then you leave it at a one-score game with Pavia having the ability to go down there and potentially give Vanderbilt the lead, despite the fact that you had, in my opinion, you had definitely dominated the second half. And, I would say once things really got going, I mean, offensively, it was strange because it was 14-14 at halftime. That's not terrible, but it's also, we were all expecting this high-scoring affair. But I did tweet out 4 out of 5 of Alabama's drives, they moved the football. It's just 2 of those drives ended with a missed field goal and an interception down in the red area. In Vanderbilt, 3 of their 4 true offensive drives in the first half, because Bama got the football first, they moved the football. But then they had the Pavia fumble and touchdown. So wait, was it 14-14 at halftime, or was it
14-14? It was 14-14 at the half. Yeah, they scored 2 touchdowns and had the 1 turnover.
Yes.
And this is what Vanderbilt does by running the clock. There's fewer possessions for Vanderbilt for everybody. That's why it was pretty remarkable performance last year by Alabama to be so limited in possessions, but score 2 points for every minute of possession time. This year, Alabama possessed it, I think, for something like 37 or 38 minutes, but notice they didn't score 76 points.
Yeah, 37, yeah.
And I do think that because, on last year's average, I would have been 74 points, and Alabama scored, basically less than half of that. Now, I do think what we're seeing is a trade-off that we knew was coming, but it's a little frustrating to watch. And here's the trade-off. Last year, you had a very explosive offense that could score a lot of points quickly, but it was also an offense that would bust out a lot. I read a stat from somebody, and gosh, I'm sorry I can't give the person credit because I don't remember. I think, but 20 this stat, so I can't verify it because this comes from just something I saw on social media. Something like at this point last year, Alabama had 22 3-and-outs. This year they've had 5. And if that's true, and again, I can't verify.
That makes sense.
A poster that, by the way, if you're listening, that poster, you are a good poster. That's why I read your posts. And I think what we're seeing is, okay, Alabama traded in the boomer bust offense for this more consistent offense. And it is more consistent, and the fans seem to like it that way. I think if you polled Alabama fans, say, which offense do you like more, this offense or last year's, they're all going to say this year. But here's the fact. I think they're scoring less. They're scoring less than they were, a year ago at this time. I mean, you scored 70 against Monroe, and that's going to skew things a little bit. But against these good competition like Wisconsin, like you scored a lot less against Georgia. You scored less against Wisconsin. You certainly scored less against Vanderbilt. But it feels better because they consistently move the ball. And it feels better to fans than last year's offense, which might have scored more points, but they did it in such a herky-jerky way and would go through long stretches of time where they didn't score at all. Didn't move the ball at all.
And I completely agree with all of that. I think fans would absolutely take this offense. They've got to do a better job of executing down in the red area. There's no doubt about that. It's been a problem the last 2 games and was definitely a problem against Vanderbilt. I have full faith that they'll get it figured out. I'm not concerned about that, especially with the way that the run game's starting to come on, which is another thing that we need to talk about, because that's exactly what Alabama was wanting. The creases were more readily available for Jam Miller and for Kevin Riley in some instances. And what I think Ryan Grubb had said was, let's get Jam Miller in some one-on-one opportunities because he can make guys miss. And he forced 2 missed tackles, not a ton, but he did get some of those one-on-one opportunities, was able to make a guy miss and turned what was already a respectable gain into a longer gain. And that led him to having 136 rushing yards on 22 carries and a touchdown. With Kevin Riley, you look at the stats, and I said this after the game, 5 carries for 17 yards. I just don't feel like that was it. It was kind of been the theme for him all season, where you look at 3.4 yards per carry and you think, oh man, maybe he's just not being very productive. He's not being very good. Now he had 2 5-yard gains negated by holding penalties. I want to point that out. But B, he's having some hit or miss, but a lot of times the miss isn't really his fault. Now, granted, I do think there's times where maybe he could see it a little better. I think he's going to get better as he gets more comfortable and more experience. But I think that he has been more productive than his yards per carry would indicate. And so while Jam Miller deserves all the flowers and all the praise right now, I will continue to reiterate, I like the combination of Kevin Riley and Jam Miller. But at the same time, if you're going to have volume in the passing game, 30-plus pass attempts pretty much each and every week, sometimes we'll touch 35, might even touch 40 in certain instances. I like getting Jam definitely, bare minimum 18 to 20 carries, 22 in this one. But, 18 to 20 I think is a good spot for him. Let Riley be the secondary guy to that. I like the way that they're handling a lot of the distribution of touches right now or attempts, in the passing game.
The commitment to the run game has to be there, regardless of whether it's producing or not. And sometimes you can get, I know Kevin Riley doesn't sound productive, and it's not productive in the normal sense. But think of this, guys. If on 1st and 10 you give it to Kevin Riley and he makes 2.5 yards, you go, that's not much. And then it's 2nd and 7.5, and you hand it to him again, he makes another 2.5 yards, and you're like, well, that's not much. But it's 3rd and 5. It's 3rd and 5. That 3rd and 5 is infinitely better than 3rd and 10. 3rd and 5 is highly makeable. Alabama's got a good 3rd down conversion percentage this year. In my opinion, it's in part to the run game has been consistently moving the ball forward a bit. It's not the production we want. It's not run the dang ball type offense. It's not joyless murder ball. But what it is it's forward progress allowing for makeable 3rd downs. Because if it's 3rd and 5, now the defense has to defend everything. They might run the ball again. They might run outside. They might run inside. It might be a short pass. They might go over the top. Heck, they went over the top on 4th and 1 this past weekend. So 3rd and 5 or shorter forces the defense to defend everything. And I do think the run game has done a good job, and Kevin Riley and specifically Jam done a good job of getting Alabama to those more makeable 3rd downs. Because a great point you made there, I couldn't agree more, is Kevin Riley, much like we talked earlier about the Alabama scoreboard itself, Kevin Riley has looked better to me than his numbers say. I would say if you ask, hey, Jimmy, is Kevin Riley playing well? I go, yeah, he is playing well. The stats say he's not.
Right.
The stats say no, he's not. But I'm watching the games, and I feel like he's contributing to a winning effort. And if it's just as simple as the 2.5-yard gain, and that's all there is, hey, as long as you're making 3rd down a more makeable thing, then the running game, it's doing its job. And again, the more you run the ball, play action doesn't work if you don't run the football. Ty makes a lot of plays off play action. It just flat out doesn't work unless you're. I like Alabama's commitment to it. I like the positive momentum from it. It just needs to remain as or more productive as it was against Vanderbilt, because I just don't think you can put the entire game on Ty's arm.
Yeah, and that's exactly, and the fact that they're getting more of that, I think, is like this offense making the next step and becoming an absolutely lethal unit. They convert. They're really comfortable in the 3rd and longer situations, not 3rd and a mile. No one wants to be there, but 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 6. They're a lot more comfortable, especially with Ty Simpson at quarterback, than they were a year ago, and also compared to a lot of offenses. But it's still a lower percentage, so you don't want to live there. You can live with it if you get there. If Kevin Riley has a couple of, he gets everything that he possibly can squeeze out of a run. He gets 2.5 yards. He gets 2.5 yards. It's 3rd and 5. You can live with that once you're in that situation. You don't want to say, well, we're fine with being in a bunch of third and longs because your percent chance of converting a third and long versus a third and short much lower. So it just is not smart football to be playing it that way. But what I like is that even in those instances, when they are putting them in third and manageables, and I say third and manageables meaning third and 4, you average 3 yards a carry. If you're Kevin Riley, it's 3rd and 4. That is very manageable. Is it ideal? No. I mean, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1. Those are the third downs that you want ideally. But 3rd and 4 is a very manageable situation. Even a guy like Ty Simpson, his legs, you can run the football technically. I mean, sometimes you'll pop somebody, it's 3rd and 8 and you'll run the football and they don't expect it. But I mean, you can actually, confidently run the football in a 3rd and 4 situation. I just think that everything is operating together enough where what's hurting them down in the red area, it's not all of a sudden everything's stalling out. It's things like taking unnecessary sacks. It's things like penalties, like Alabama got down there. It's like against Florida State. They drive down the field, first drive, score a touchdown. Florida State matches. Alabama moves the football again on the second drive, but they get down there and there's like a holding penalty or something happened that put them way behind the sticks. It ended the drive. It ended up being a long field goal attempt, and Talty missed it. So that's where things really started to go off the rail. It's penalties. It's taking unnecessary sacks, which is why you don't want to take the playmaking ability out of Ty Simpson. I said this after the first unnecessary sack that he took. Hey, a lot of times he's escaping. He's making plays. You don't want to coach that out of him. You want him to continue to do that. That has been massive. Take the little bad with the tons of good. When it happened the second time, I'm like, okay, you got to chill out. Like this can be something that you do every once in a while. This can't be a thing where it's happening 3-4 times every game because they are drive killers. And, with Alabama's offense, that's why I don't like them getting cute down in the red area, because it's like the way that you're moving the football, whether it's running or throwing, you were having plenty of success just doing what you were doing, and you were keeping yourselves in the manageable situations, and you didn't put yourself in the third and impossibles. The only time is when they get really cute, whether it be Ty Simpson or Ryan Grubb, whichever one. It was one of those two getting a little too cute, trying to make too much happen, and they would put themselves in very unmanageable situations, and that's where they were having to settle for field goals. Give Connor Talty credit for capitalizing after that first miss on those opportunities, but that's where I think Alabama can improve down in the red area.
Yeah, I think offensive coordinators and quarterbacks, they're a lot like us regular people in some ways. I know, myself, like at the driving range, I do this all the time. It thankfully it doesn't have much on the course, but the driving range, I hit 3 or 4 really good ones in a row for me. Like, wow, that was a good shot. That was good. 3 or 4 good ones. So now I'm feeling good. So then the next one, I'm like, okay, this one I'm going to try to work it a little right to left. And what do? I end up hitting a ball that looks like the kick that Talty missed at Georgia. I mean, that's as soon as I start thinking that I'm capable of doing something, I'm capable of manipulating my ball flight, I'm just not good enough of a golfer to do that. Well, I think quarterbacks and offensive coordinators are the same way. When things are going really well consecutively, you get this, hey, confidence is great, but it goes too far with it. I can do no wrong.
Right.
Everything is going to go great. And you take a chance, or you do a little bit more than you should have. And I think Ty is guilty of that at times, of probably coming from some overconfidence. And then the offensive coordinator the same way. If you feel like, boy, every time I reach in my bag here, we're coming up gold, you're probably just going to keep reaching in the bag until you come up with poop. And I think that's so. I think Ty is very confident. He's just got to understand where the line is. You're confident because you're making smart decisions, and the smart decisions work out. As soon as you get the confidence, it gets a little bit into cocky. Now you're duck hooking a ball like I do on the driving range.
Well, one thing I will say about all of that is I have been very encouraged, or I was very encouraged about his ability to respond after making a mistake. I like the fact that he didn't get too conservative. Like, he throws that interception and he was still making some risky throws, but good throws. Like, it wasn't like he was putting the ball in harm's way necessarily, but it was like he was fearless after the interception. I was worried. I wouldn't say worried, but that was a question. At some point, this guy's going to throw an interception. We had always heard under Nick Saban, that it's like, hey, his ability to respond to a mistake, he doesn't need to let things compound and stack on him, get too down on himself when he makes a mistake. So then he throws that interception, and it was a very poor decision, very poor throw, should not have made it. And I'm like, this is a box that needs to be checked. What does he do? And he goes out there and he's still just firing, no problem. I'm like, that's really good. He goes out there and he takes a completely unnecessary sack, hurts Alabama, forces them to kick a field goal. They weren't on schedule anymore. And what does he do? He takes a second one. That's you kind of don't want to see that. I want you to be a little bit more weary of that after the first one. But at the same time, what that shows is just because he did that, it did not mean that he got timid or scared. He was still trying to make plays. He still believed in his ability to do it. His ability to move past what I would call mistakes is very encouraging. And he did face some against Florida State, and it was a first career start. And I do think to some extent, maybe nerves did get involved a little bit. But since that point, a lot has gone right for Ty Simpson, but not everything's gone right. He's faced some adversity, and he has handled that adversity extremely well since then. That might be one of my biggest, because Ty just continued to do Ty things against Vanderbilt. But he showed something that, in my opinion, he had not had to show since the Florida State game, and that was the ability to respond to pretty critical mistakes. And I thought he handled both situations really well.
Man, before Ty became the quarterback, and I was trying to explain to the listeners what kind of quarterback he is and who he was, this is just a fact. Ty is an early young player at Alabama, had a difficult time playing past mistakes. He would get very frustrated. If he made a bad play, it would linger. I also said that Ty reminds me of Mac Jones a lot. And I'm not talking about physically, because Ty is just a bigger, stronger, more athletic kid than Mac Jones. It's not a good comp quarterback to quarterback, but they do have very similar personalities. Their personalities are really similar, and the way they can process similar. But Mac also had the same problem. That's one of the reasons that I said Mac had the same problem. The other day, Nick Saban said about Mac Jones that Mac grew up playing tennis, and his nickname for Mac, when Mac was a young quarterback at Alabama, Saban called him John McEnroe, because Mac would make a bad play and then freak out, go nuts, have a little tantrum, literally very McEnroe-like. And as Mac gained maturity and then experience, we saw a great leader on the field. With Ty, we're seeing that now. I think Ty has matured and the experience has come. Now when he makes a mistake, it's right on to the next play. That's a big difference when fans get frustrated because younger players aren't playing. This is why it takes them a while to learn to get to flush the bad play. You got to flush it. There's more plays to play. And that's a very difficult thing for young players to do. Flush the bad play and move on to the next one. I think Ty against Florida State, the car got driven in the ditch and it kind of stayed down there. I think Ty got a little panicky and kind of lost his poise a little bit. How long did it take him to bounce out of that? One game. Yep. One game. Because now I see a poise, calm leader, and now he's brought Alabama back. I know they weren't down 7-0 to Vanderbilt in the fourth quarter, but they were down. It wasn't going great. Ty threw an early interception. He bounced back from all of it to play really well. I thought he was playing his best football near the end of the game, even though Alabama was running the ball a lot. And how about that drive late in the game, Clint, when Alabama went run, and just motored all the way down the field? Kind of felt like the offense arrived a little bit there, even though Ty wasn't throwing the ball.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said after the game, I felt like there was like a stretch to start the game, but they were a little run heavy. But it's like, okay, they saw something on tape. They saw the same thing I saw. Like, I thought that Vanderbilt was kind of gettable a lot more gettable as far as their run defense, and Alabama was close. You could see it against Georgia. They weren't quite popping some things, but I mean, it was close. And obviously the coaching staff talked about that throughout the week, and they saw it too. And so they kind of wanted to make a statement. It obviously worked, but in my opinion, they started a little bit run heavy, and then they kind of just abandoned it there for a while. It was kind of strange, and they got really pass heavy. I mean, I want to say it was like a little midway point, maybe a little, 9-10 minute mark of the fourth quarter. Like, they hadn't run the football with a running back since like 10 minutes in the third quarter. So they went pretty much an entire quarter without having the running back carry the ball once. It's like, okay, you got a little bit pass happy. And then when they really needed it, they get back to running the football. It was weird because they started the game really well running it, and they finished the game really well running it. So it was like, why did you stop for an extended period of time in the middle of it? I can't answer that question. But what I will say is, once again, this is a question that we had about Ryan Grubb. I do still think that I still think he's adjusting, because I do think that he really is almost, if as much as we say like he wants to run the football because he's got like that offensive line background and everything else, it when you watch him coach, it does feel like at times you just give me a reason to throw this football around, man, because he knows he's got a dude at quarterback. He knows he's got receivers. You can't blame him. But at the same time, it's almost like late in the game, he's like, no. I have to get back focused in on, we were having success running the football. We need to run the football. We need to run clock. And he got back in the right mindset at the right time to help Alabama win a very successful drive that took a ton of time off the clock, that really put the game away, in my opinion, and put them back in control. So that give him a lot of credit too, because I think across the board, he did an excellent job of that relative to the way that maybe he's handled some things in the past.
Yeah, I just can't believe that at one point in the game, I was going, I'm really pleased as an Alabama fan with our offense today, and we have 23 points against Vanderbilt. But I'm pleased with this, and it's a weird thing to say, but it's just the way the game played out. So I'm pleased overall where the offense is. Hey, the best kinds of wins to me, if you want to be a championship football team, is when you win the game because the offense and the defense did their part. I felt that happened at Georgia, and I felt it happened against Vanderbilt on Saturday. The offense scored more than enough points to win the game. They controlled the clock. They didn't turn over the ball. They made some plays. And defensively, you held Vanderbilt to 14 points. Not everyone's going to do that all year. I mean, Vanderbilt's not going to go out there and score 40 on SEC opponents, but I bet 14 is going to be on the low side of most Vanderbilt performances against SEC teams, regardless of how it happened or what happened in the game. You held Vandy to 14. So obviously you should win the game when the opponent only scores 14 points. So offense contributed, defense contributed, Talty made the kicks. Great team win, and we're saying that for the second week in a row.
We talk a little bit too much about the reason I'm bringing this up. I know I'm not the only one, but I am going to 100% put myself in this conversation because I found myself doing it on Saturday. Everybody's like, oh, I mean, Ryan Grubb, he's getting way too cute down there in the red area or in the red zone or whatever. It's just like, man, stop being cute, man. Just do what's working or whatever. And then those same people, myself included, he runs the football with 360-pound offensive tackle. You talk about getting too cute. That's getting too cute. And because it worked, we're all like, oh, hell of a job, man. You're doing a phenomenal job.
Exactly.
It's like, if you're going to get mad at him for being too cute, you shouldn't be supporting that, because that's the definition of getting too cute. That is a guy. And at some point, I will hop on this show. If they keep doing this, at some point, you would think that it's probably not going to work out. It's going to be hopefully not catastrophic, but because a guy who's not used to securing the football, he fumbles it, or he drops the ball when he did that, and it's like, that's behind the line of scrimmage. That would have been a fumble. Like, if that stuff don't work out and you end up making a big play, hand the opposing team momentum, there's going to be a lot of fans that immediately go from, man, I love what they're doing with Caden Proctor and getting him all these really cool touches and stuff, to, why are you being too cute in this situation? Just run the ball, or just do this. I am doing it as well, which is why I was like, man, you got to stop that. You either need to stop supporting the Caden Proctor stuff, or you need to say, hey, you know what? The cute don't always work, but I like the cute. I like kind of putting strain on opposing defenses with some of the stuff that they're creating. You would like the perfect timing on all of it and it all to work out where you can do the cute and get away with it. But people only tend to complain about the cute when it doesn't work.
Yeah, the trick plays and the gadget plays and all that stuff. It's fun. It's fun for fans. It's fun. And it is fun. And obviously Ryan Grubb has fun with it. But, I think there's a reason we didn't see a lot of trick plays in the Saban era. Not a lot, occasionally. And, I think trick plays is what UCLA needs to use to beat Penn State. I don't think it should be what Alabama needs to use to beat Vanderbilt. So I'm a little old school when it comes to that. I think just straight up run plays and pass plays are probably all you need to win against most of these opponents if you're Alabama. So I'm with you. It's fun, and I'm having fun with it. But when it blows up and goes bad, people like me and you that sort of do this for our job, we're going to be here going, boy, that was a mistake.
Yep. And there's going to be a lot of people who are in here complaining about it because, and it's understandable. It's like I said, anytime I say this kind of stuff, I'm right there with you guys. Like, I have these conversations with myself because when they ran I thought it was so cool. I'm like, dude, because we talked about it last week. You said, I hope they run that same play against Vanderbilt. they didn't, but they got Caden Proctor involved in a different way. And it's
didn't
like,
use him as a decoy, just went straight to him.
And
they see him as a
converted. And what's funny is like what you said last week, you want opposing defenses moving forward to have to worry about that and prepare for that. No, it wasn't the same play, but they had to worry. What are they going to do with Caden Proctor this week? I mean, we got to figure it out. Should we be getting our practice squad, 350-pound offensive guard some carries, this week in practice to try to give our defense a look for what it's like to tackle somebody like that? Like this is strain, but at the same time, I'm just going to take the philosophy of, I do think that there's a little cuteness too much at times, but I would rather them lean that way because of the creativity and the strain, rather than, and just understand that it's not always going to work out.
And here's the thing about being too cute. This is what I mean by too cute when I'm talking about overthinking or making it more complicated than it is. You've got to play where Proctor's in the backfield on short yardage you feel good about. They obviously feel good about it because they used it with the game on the line and he converted. So why didn't they run that play on the 4th and 1 when Ty threw the interception? I mean, it's 4th and 1 and you're down the red zone and you need a yard, and we decide to see if we can't get a cheap one over the top. Give the ball to Proctor. I mean, if you want to be cute, give the ball to Proctor. I just thought it was like, hey, let's just keep the ball and make a first down. And now you showed us that you have a short yardage play with 370-pound running back. So if you're inclined to be cute on 4th and 1, do that and don't take the top off. So that's what I mean by it. But I agree. The Proctor stuff's fun. As a fan, I want to see it again. As an analyst, I'm like, be careful with this.
Yes.
Because when it goes sideways, it's not only going to be ugly in the game, it'll be ugly on the podcasts after the game.
I know me. I know I'm going to jump on here and be like, what in the world were you thinking? That was such a dumb move. And over here, if you go pull the receipts on me, I'd be like, man, I love this stuff. What who else we going to get involved, man? Let's get big Tim Keenan some carries too, man. Let's have some fun. So, I mean, please don't put me in that situation, Ryan Grubb. Save me from myself.
And by the way, don't do this. Like, I know Ryan Grubb listens to the show. How about 4th and 1, Proctor under center?
Don't give them any ideas, Jimmy.
and is tush pushed by Tim Keenan.
There ain't enough push for that tush, man. Come on now.
Tim Keenan pushing Proctor. That's what I'm talking about. And then
with the way this is trending, that's a realistic possibility. In fact, you might have just sparked something. But man, if it doesn't work,
and now it's on me. Now it's on me.
Yeah, I'm going to be blaming it on you. I'm going to hop on here and say, you apologize to all these fine folks, Jimmy, because I don't.
Sure. My wife will.
Speaking of the offensive line, I did go back and I looked because I just found it fascinating. That what kind of tipped me off to this was the fact that Will Sanders ended up playing more snaps at left guard than Cam Dewberry. He played 53.4% of the snaps versus Dewberry at 46.6%. And that just kind of, I was like, okay, let me go compare, because we know there was a lot of rotation following the bye along the offensive line. Let me go look at the Georgia game, and let me go look at the Vanderbilt game and kind of see how things played out. So obviously now Proctor, other than kind of doing what they're doing with him, where they're, lining him up out wide and lining him up in the backfield, against Vanderbilt, he played 98.6% of the snaps at left tackle. I found it interesting because the one that he didn't, where he was in the backfield, it was not Jackson Lloyd who came in at left tackle. It was Olas Alinen. So that was interesting.
You got a great block, by the way.
Yeah,
you got a great block on the play.
I mean, that's 100% correct. Dewberry and Sanders. So against Georgia, Dewberry played 68.4% of the snaps. Sanders played 31.6%, so about a 2/3 relative to a third. And then in this one, it was pretty 50-50, but actually Sanders got the majority of the snaps at that spot. So that is noteworthy. I feel like that's a slow – I think Cam Dewberry had some really good moments against Vanderbilt. Do not get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I think there is a slow transition happening, if I'm speaking candidly. And we'll just have to see how it continues, because I think that in some ways that's also happening at right tackle, and we'll get to that in a second. Brailsford has played 100% of the snaps at center in both contests. Not moving him. He played phenomenal against Vanderbilt. Great game from him. Right guard against Georgia, Vandermark played 68.4% of the snaps. Formby played 22.8, and then Jaden Roberts played 8.8% of the snaps. Against Vanderbilt, that number went up for Vandermark from 68.4 to 79.5. Formby's percent of snaps at guard kind of went down. And then, but at the same time, that didn't lead to more snaps for Formby at right tackle. Formby had 67.1% of the snaps, so 2/3 of the snaps against Georgia at right tackle. Against Vanderbilt, he played less than 50% of the snaps at right tackle. Michael Carroll played more snaps at right tackle by a pretty wide margin than Wilkin Formby did. He played 58.6 after only playing 31.6% of the snaps at right tackle against Georgia. So my point in saying that, I think there's a slow transition happening to Will Sanders and Michael Carroll. We'll have to see how this continues. It's a 2-game sample size, but you see an increase, a very clear increase from Georgia to Vanderbilt. And I think their performances against Georgia was the reason that they felt comfortable doing that. What does that mean for Wilkin Formby? He did get some reps at right guard. I said after the game, I said during the game when it happened, and I said it after the game, I don't like moving him back and forth from guard to tackle not every other drive, but even mid-game. Unless you have to do that, this is a guy who's used to setting in space and having to deal with SEC speed. You put him in there at guard, he oversets, and he gets beat inside for a critical sack that completely ended that drive near the goal line. And that was, in my opinion, at the time, it felt very critical. Like if they could have gone down the field and put points on the board, that would have been absolutely massive. But they, in my opinion, once again, that was a cute situation, in my opinion. And it's like, and that's why, for the most part, I think after that, Vandermark ended up playing 80%, essentially, the snaps at right guard overall against Vanderbilt after playing less than 70%, a little less than 70% against Georgia. I think that was them saying, you know what, Vandermark, he does get beat, but let's let Formby, if we're trying him out at guard and we want to move to Carroll at tackle, let's let him figure some of these things out in practice rather than in an SEC game when everything's on the line. I think that's my takeaway, at least, and we'll have to see how it continues to kind of transpire.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, center and left tackle are just set. Alabama's got 2 of the very best players in the country at those spots. Kalen DeBoer himself said Parker Brailsford's the best center in college football. He said that last week on his radio show. Caden Proctor playing better and better and better. One of my themes this offseason about Proctor was we've never seen him in shape, healthy, and experienced. We've never seen all 3 at once. Well, I was a little wrong. I think to start the season, he wasn't in great shape. That's on me. I should have understood or factored in more all the time he missed due to the shoulder surgery. And after the shoulder surgery, missing a lot of spring practice, even missing some work this summer, rehabbing from the shoulder injury, these real big, naturally 370-pound guys, they get out of shape. It's very difficult to get back in shape. And he had an excuse for being out of shape. He was rehabbing from a serious surgery. So now he's sort of playing his way into shape, and we see him getting better and better and better every week. And now he was a pro PFF star in terms of how he graded out against Vanderbilt. Now I think Alabama has a high quality left tackle. Proctor, best center in the country, and Brailsford. Agree totally with Clint. Feels like Will Sanders is sort of emerging as the left guard. Over time, he's a redshirt freshman, hadn't played. They're putting him in the shallow end of the pool, didn't just throw him into the deep end. Same thing at right tackle. Feels like Michael Carroll sort of taking that spot from Wilkin Formby bit by bit each week as he gets more and more experience, a young player. To me, that really leaves just right guard as being unsettled. And frankly, I don't know what's going to happen there. I think you have multiple interesting contenders. Formby, who's very experienced. Gino Vandermark's a senior. You could try Dewberry there. He's a senior. Obviously, you got Jaden Roberts, who's played a lot. So it's not like you lack options, but it certainly feels like Will Sanders at left guard and Michael Carroll at right tackle are winning spots and winning jobs. It feels that way. Still unsettled a bit, but what matters is overall performance. And I think overall may have been the offensive line's best game. I know Ty got sacked a time or two, but again, they had success both pass protecting and in the run game in this one.
I think Caden Proctor's played excellent the last 2 weeks. I think Formby has played okay. I don't think he's been like a massive problem at right tackle. I mean, obviously the pressure, getting beat inside at guard, a position that he hasn't played like a ton throughout his career, it's very understandable. So I don't look at that. A lot of people will say, "Oh, man, to just get him out of there," because he hadn't been as good as people wanted at right tackle, and then you see him do something like that at guard. It's like, dude, you're trying him at guard, and he's not working either. Get him out. To me, it's like, no, let's evaluate how he's improving at tackle. And so, even though I do think it is trending towards Michael Carroll, I think it's because Michael Carroll's just that good. I do want to at least acknowledge that I feel like Wilkin Formby is not playing bad football. But at the same time, it feels that way. Now, granted, there's been times where it seemed like something was trending in one direction for one reason or another. It doesn't end up working out that way. So maybe this continues to be a platoon at left guard all year. Maybe it continues to be a platoon at right tackle all year. They've seemed willing to do it, and it's like it's kind of hard to argue against it because in a lot of ways, I mean, they're having a lot of success moving the football despite a heavy rotation. I've never seen this much rotation on the offensive line. It's been an anomaly in my opinion, but it's working okay. And you're building depth. Like if something happens, if Michael Carroll becomes your starter and then he gets hurt, Wilkin Formby's continue to get snaps and reps, and so he's ready to rock and roll. You know, a guy like Will Sanders. If something happens to Cam Dewberry, you've got a guy who's already been kind of prepped and ready. If he ends up overtaking the starting job and then he gets hurt, Cam Dewberry's played a lot of football with this offensive line. So, I mean, he's ready to kind of step in. So, like, I think from a depth building standpoint, the problem with the too much rotation is that, in my opinion, it puts you in some vulnerable situations at some points. And that's why I think ultimately it's probably not worth it at a lot of these spots. But what it does do is that in an era where a lot of teams just don't have the depth that they used to, if you're developing a lot of depth with a lot of rotation and getting a lot of guys snaps, by the time that things really start to matter at the end of the season, you are in a better position with better depth to help you finish out the season than maybe some of these teams that are sticking to their starters and they're not having a whole lot of rotation. That's what I think the goal is creating competition. It's making everybody better, but it's also getting a lot of guys experience. You just better make damn sure that you don't lose enough games in that process where you don't even get to the finish line and you can't even make it to the playoffs or whatever, because then what does it matter if you have the best team at that point with all the depth in the world if you're not even given an opportunity to go and showcase it on the biggest stage?
And the coaches don't care about next year. That's not how coaches work anymore. Maybe back when Coach Bryant was here in the 70s, he was always thinking about next year's team. Coaching is too fleeting these days. You never know whether you're going to have a job the next week, much less the next year. But that said, when you went into the year believing that the offensive line was going to be Proctor, Dewberry, Brailsford, Vandermark, Formby, there's a good chance only one of those guys is returning next year, Formby, because Proctor and Brailsford may be off to the NFL. The other two guards, they're seniors. Only Formby's coming back. That's a mess. Well, now look at next year. Now, Michael Carroll, you got coming back. You got Will Sanders coming back. You got Formby coming back. That's three guys. Plus, with the ones you are playing Olas Alanine and Jackson Lloyd. They're playing snaps with the ones too at times.
Yeah.
Boy, that's a radically different looking group next year now that you're playing all these guys. So
Great
that's not
point.
why they're doing it, but it's
I mean,
it changes our conversations next spring.
Well, if you feel like Michael Carroll has the chance to be an all SEC tackle for you, I mean, I could see Wilkin Formby seeing snaps at guard because they foresee, hey, you know, because right now I think between Geno Vandermark, and I guess we'll get to this conversation now, but and Jaden Roberts, I think you've got two decent guard options there on the right side. So it's like, why are you trying Wilkin there? Well, Jaden Roberts isn't going to be back next season. Neither is Geno Vandermark. So if you had Michael Carroll returning, who's got experience ready to go at right tackle, you had Formby at right guard, you had Will Sanders at either center or left guard. You know, you brought that conversation up last week, and then you had two guys who can play, you know, left tackle who's got a little bit of experience. Then it's like, yeah, you're in a much better place with your offensive line. So in my opinion, that hadn't really Formby at right guard hadn't made a whole lot of sense unless you start expanding it beyond 2025. So
that's a ton of sense next year. And again, I think Will Sanders will be a center next year. That's my
makes sense.
I mean, I might be the only person. I don't know that it's come up in the football building, but when we recruited Will Sanders out of Brookwood High School in Tuscaloosa, I was saying even back then, I'm like, this guy looks like a center to me. And now, obviously, who knows about snapping the ball? That's sort of important, as we found out in 2023. That's sort of important. But he's a phenomenal athlete. He's got great feet, and actually reminds me quite a bit of Parker Brailsford. So I think Will Sanders could be the center. Then you got Formby at one guard, and I think Olas at the other guard,
Jackson
and
Lloyd at left
tackle, Michael Carroll right tackle. Now you not only you got some pretty experienced guys there. I mean, obviously Jackson Lloyd to be the least experienced, but he's probably going to be playing more and more. There's that Eastern Illinois game also much later this year when you can see a lot of these guys play. But I'd kind of, if I was guessing next year's offensive line, that would be my guess today. Lloyd, Olas, Sanders, Formby, Carroll.
That makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. A lot of people have asked, and I've really refrained from addressing it. I think that you said that you addressed it on Locked On Bama, but we'll at least talk about it a little bit here because part of this conversation is Jaden Roberts. What are your thoughts on the fact that he's not really playing? He saw less than 10% of the snaps at right guard against Georgia. He didn't play at all against Vanderbilt. I think the writing has been on the wall for a while, in my opinion. I think I said even before, as that concussion happened, it had already felt like that they were transitioning away from him. And I knew that was going to shock a lot of people. But at the same time, I have no idea why that is, but just wanted your thoughts on what's going on with Jaden Roberts.
Yeah, I mean, all I really have is guesswork here in terms of what the trend has been. I agree with Clint's trend is kind of trending that way, and I think there's some inconsistency issues with him. But I think the inconsistency could also come from the concussion and other injuries last year, this year. I mean, I think it's been a repeated thing with him. And when these big guys, like we talked about with Proctor missing time after his shoulder surgery, these big guys, they miss time, their conditioning gets all out of whack, and it takes a while for them to get it back. So I think the injuries plus the time he's missed because of the injuries, that's probably a factor. I think an even greater factor is this. Again, I'm not privy to the numbers and I don't trust PFF's numbers enough, but just kind of going off my own eyeballs and what I think is happening is and it's happening with Carroll and Sanders, and I think are all part of this. Part of this trend that we're seeing is DeBoer and Grubb want to throw the ball. They need their 5 best pass pro guys up front, not their 5 best run blockers. It's a pass the ball first offense. When you have a pass the ball first offense, you need a pass pro first offensive line. And while I don't know this for a fact, I could be easily convinced that Gino Vandermark is a better pass pro guy than Jaden Roberts. I can't swear to it. Certainly seems that way, feels that way. Now, Jaden's great at moving people. He's one of the strongest guys ever played at Alabama. I think if you're playing Saban ball, if you're going back to 2011 and Trent Richardson's at running back and AJ's a quarterback, I think the Cam Dewberry, Jaden Roberts guard group is what you want there, moving people off the line of scrimmage. But in terms of getting set in pass protection and maintaining your base and all that stuff, I'm just guessing the combination of Jaden's injuries, conditioning, and the fact he's not a premier pass pro guy at guard is probably why he's behind the others. But hey, I'm guessing. I mean, it could be something else entirely that hadn't even occurred to me.
I mean, I think I view it just slightly different than you, but I think we're pretty much along the same lines as far as our thought process. I think it's more athleticism, not necessarily for pass protection, even though I do think pass protection plays a part in that.
But just hand in hand.
Yeah, even a guy like Dewberry, who has not had a concussion, who has played pretty good football, somehow he's still losing snaps to Will Sanders. Why is that? I think there's a similar conversation as far as what he does versus what Jaden Roberts does. And it's like they're kind of transitioning away from, and we don't know this for sure. And I don't want to alert anybody or freak anybody out. People might see this and take this as the gospel. I haven't talked to anybody about this, behind the scenes. This is purely speculation, and I'm working off of pretty much similar to the same information that everybody else is working off of. So don't take this as the gospel. This is pure speculation. I know yours was too. It's just I do find it interesting how, some of the things, if you got to the bare bones of what Jaden Roberts does versus what he doesn't necessarily do well, and you compare that to Cam Dewberry, they're not the same player, but there's some similar themes. Similar enough where it's like I can see like Wilkin Formby being a tackle, handling edge speed, not a great, I wouldn't classify as like a premier athlete. I think he's a good athlete for like a puller though, and a guard who is normally not going to be the type of athlete from a foot speed standpoint and stuff as a tackle. That's just the way that they're built. So it's like that kind of starts to make sense. Gino Vandermark is not a premier athlete by any means, but I think he's more technically savvy. I think he blocks better out in space. And it's not, Jaden has the ability to get out there, but I just think couple things. A, I don't think he locks onto defenders in space well enough or consistently enough. And B, I do think he gets a little bit top heavy, in, whether it be as a run blocker sometimes, but also in pass protection. And that could kind of get him into trouble. So just wanted to at least touch on that. Go ahead.
And to oversimplify, this is just oversimplifying the way I'm looking at this. And this could be like, this could just be a wrong way to look at it. But just to explain how I feel, is I feel like during the Saban era, or most of the Saban era, not the end, most of the Saban era, Alabama was run first. And there was sort of an effort to get 5 guards up front because they wanted to run the ball, have pulling guards, move people off the line of scrimmage and run the ball. You want 5 guards. I think DeBoer and Grubb want 5 tackles. And by that, I just mean guys with athletic feet, super athletic dudes with long arms who are built to pass protect. And I think we're sort of moving in that direction of, okay, we need more tackles playing and fewer guards, whereas Saban kind of wanted 5 guys that look like Jaden Roberts from left tackle to right tackle. I think Formby, Jackson Lloyd, Michael Carroll, and his length. Tyler Booker was a tackle-looking guard. That's why he played tackle. When Tyler Booker was coming out of high school, most people thought he was going to be a tackle. He played tackle his whole first spring semester at Alabama, even played left tackle in a game his junior year. So I think, I'm not talking about guards who can play tackle. I think Michael Carroll's that guy. Frankly, to me, Michael Carroll reminds me a lot of Tyler Booker. He's just Tyler Booker playing tackle. But you know where Tyler Booker would be right now if he just played tackle the whole time at Alabama? Playing for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll say this, man. I thought Cam Newberry's not even close to the caliber of player as Tyler Booker. But one of the things that when Tyler Booker left, it's like, man, you're losing a really good player, great leadership, very, very good football player. He went number 12 overall as an interior offensive lineman. That is absurd. I mean, like Chance Warmack went up there, he busted out. A lot of teams it doesn't have the value that tackle does. And so the fact that they took him that high, that meant something. He's a very special player. But one of the weaknesses, in my opinion, was the athleticism. As far as pulling and getting into space, he was not great at it. And so it's like, well, while there are a lot of downsides to losing Tyler Booker. It's also looking for the silver lining, and it's like you can get more athletic at guard and have more of the style that fits this system and this offense. And then they go get Cam Newberry, and it's like, experience. You need the experience, but it was like they're similar enough where I was like, that's interesting.
It's
so
like a Saban take.
Yes, yeah, and I mean, they wanted
that,
more experience, and they wanted competition there at guard where they could have. And I think Cam Newberry is doing some good, just like with Tyler Booker, just to a much lesser extent. Like he does do a lot of things well to a point where it's like you can win with him. Like I don't think that they are going to, oh my gosh, Cam Newberry is going to be the reason they lose football games if he remains in the lineup. No. That's not what I'm saying. I just think that they'll be able to unlock more stuff if they end up getting that athleticism into the lineup, as long as there's not too much of a drop off as far as the people moving side of things.
One of the reasons they're good is because they're playing 9 or 10 guys. I don't think any of them are a liability. I think they're still trying to determine what's the 5 best. I mean, who are the best? What should we go with? I think every kid they've put on the field with the ones has been a good player. Even Olaus and Jackson Lloyd, who play less than the others, I think they play winning football when they're out there. Dewberry certainly does. Vanderbilt does. Again, very few of these guys are dominant. The only 2 that are dominant are Proctor and Brailsford, and that's the reason they never come off the field. The other ones are all fine. But when I say they're fine, and people think that that's not a compliment, I'm saying they're fine for SEC offensive linemen playing for a championship program. That's a different fine than, hey, well, the guy that plays left guard at Kansas, he's fine. No. I mean, they're fine for Alabama. They're good players. You're just still trying to find your 5 best.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at the Joe Moore Award-winning offensive line for Washington. They had a first-round pick at left tackle. They had a second-round pick at right tackle. Parker Brailsford was not the Parker Brailsford that he was at Bama.
Freshman.
He was a redshirt freshman, and granted, he was really good. He was really good for the Pac-12, in my opinion. But I think when he got to Alabama, he just reached a different level. He's continued to get better. He's amazing. But their guards were very I think one of them transferred, ended up being a starter for Ole Miss, but when both of them went undrafted, there were nothing to write home about. There were nothing special. So when you look at that, and it's like you don't have to have just 5 NFL draft picks along your offensive line with 4 of them being first or second round picks to have a good offensive line. So that's just something to keep in mind. These guys, it's all about how they're working together. I think they're also looking long term. Very quick points because we've just spent a ton of time. And what I've already decided, if you're listening to this, you are listening to this on Monday, not on Tuesday, because I'm going to release this one first, save the other one for tomorrow. But that also means as you're listening to the one tomorrow about the defense versus Vanderbilt's offense, you're also going to be like, what is he talking about? Because I was fully anticipating that was going to release that one first. But this one just has felt like a longer conversation, a more valuable conversation for people. So I want to go ahead and get this one out as soon as possible. But very quickly, wide receiver room, just impressed with the number of different guys they have. Yes, Ryan Williams had another drop, but 6 catches for 98 yards, 5, 6, 7 targets for your big 3. Once again, seeing plenty of usage. Love what Josh Cuevas did. He got 6 targets, 3 catches for 35 yards. That fourth down that they got to him, and then I thought he might get tackled short, and then he just trucked through some guys, broke a couple of tackles, and turned into a very respectable gain. Like, that was good for him. So, I mean, very encouraged by the pass catchers that Alabama, what they all continue to do for sure.
Yeah, no, nothing really to chime in there because you just now what you get, you've got. I mean, Ryan is a premier playmaker in all of college football. Jeremy Bernard's one of the best pure wide receivers. I was sort of wrong about him. I mean, I felt all spring and summer they're talking about him in the NFL. I'm like, I said, well, I don't know, maybe day 2, but I haven't seen him be productive enough to justify it. Now I have. Yep. To me, Jeremy Bernard is good enough to be a round 1 pick in the NFL draft, which is nuts. But Ryan and Horton's really good. The thing that stood out to me about wide receivers this week, just in terms of playing rotation, is Derek Meadows. That was a bit of a surprise. Derek Meadows playing a handful of snaps. Again, no garbage time. Jalen Bachway got on the field some, so you didn't see Cole Adams. You didn't see, seeing Derek Meadows again with the ones was what really kind of shocked me a little bit. But hey, I'm really high on him. I think he's gonna be a good player. You could have some real wide receiver movement with the transfer portal because that's a position that's famous for everybody wanting the ball. But hey, it's one of the best groups in all of college football, and nothing we saw this weekend changed my mind about that.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And Ty Simpson's doing a phenomenal job of taking advantage of all those guys. So, while the points haven't been pouring in like we all were hoping, I think that's coming. They just got to do a much better job in the red area of being, not getting too cute, making things manageable, keeping things manageable. And I think they'll continue to inch their way down the field and score touchdowns. And you're hoping that a lot of the explosive plays, the long touch, they're doing a great job of the intermediate stuff and attacking the middle of the field and just consistently getting chunk plays. But as far as the really big explosives, the 50-yard touchdowns, the 40-yard touchdown run, like that, those are things that you want to continue to see kind of develop within this offense. But great conversation, Jimmy. We hope people have enjoyed listening. Once again, we will be back on Wednesday previewing the Missouri game. It's going to be a tough matchup. So certainly looking forward to that. And we will talk to you guys soon.